This happened about 7 years ago now. I was 24, fresh out of a relationship that had gone sideways, and I'd just moved back to my hometown because I couldn't afford to stay in the city anymore. My aunt had this rental property, a little house on the edge of town, nothing special, but she gave me a break on rent because nobody else wanted it. I figured it was fine. The place was old but solid, and honestly, the quiet was kind of nice after all the noise of the city. The house sat at the end of a dead-end road called Hemlock Lane. There were maybe 5 other houses on the whole street, spaced far apart with woods in between, and most of them were owned by retirees who kept to themselves. I worked second shift at a warehouse about 20 minutes away, so I'd get home around midnight most nights, eat something, watch TV for an hour and go to sleep. It wasn't an exciting life, but it was steady. I needed steady. I'd been there about 3 weeks when I started noticing the car. It was a dark sedan. I want to say blue or black, it was hard to tell at night. I pull onto Hemlock Lane and see it parked about 100 feet past my driveway, on the shoulder, facing out toward the main road. Always the same spot, always empty. I figured someone was visiting one of the neighbors, or maybe a commuter who left their car there to carpool. It wasn't blocking anything, and honestly, I didn't think much of it at first. But then it started appearing at other times. I'd look out my kitchen window in the afternoon and see it sitting there. I'd leave for work at 3 and it'd be there. I'd come home at midnight and it'd be there, same spot, never moved. Never a person inside that I could see. I mentioned it to my neighbor Bill, this older guy 2 houses down who spent most of his time in his garage with the door open, tinkering with his truck. He just shrugged and said it was probably one of the McAllister kids from the next street over. They parked there sometimes. That made sense. I didn't think about it again for another week or so. The first time I really noticed something was off, I was coming home from work and the car was gone. That was the weird thing. I'd gotten so used to seeing it there that the empty spot felt wrong. But I just figured the McAllister kid had finally taken it somewhere. I went inside, made some mac and cheese, watched a rerun of some cop show I don't even remember, and went to bed. I woke up at maybe 2:30 in the morning. I don't know why. Sometimes I just do that. I got up to get a glass of water and looked out the kitchen window, and the car was back. Same spot, like it had never left. That was the first time I actually felt uneasy about it. Not scared, just uneasy. I stood there in my kitchen for a solid minute, staring at that car through the dark, trying to see if there was someone inside, but it was too dark to tell. I remember thinking, I should go out there and check. I almost did. But then I told myself I was being ridiculous and went back to bed. I should have gone out there. Not that it would have changed anything, I guess, but I still think about that sometimes. A few nights later, I got home and the car was there, same as always. I pulled into my driveway, cut the engine, and sat there for a second. I don't know why. I just felt like I should wait. Like if I got out of my car and walked to my front door, something would happen. That sounds stupid when I say it out loud, but I don't know. I had this feeling. I sat there maybe 2 or 3 minutes. The car just sat there too. Nobody got out. Nothing moved. I finally told myself I was being an idiot and got out, walked to my front door, unlocked it, went inside. I didn't look back at the car. I figured if I didn't look, it wouldn't feel so weird. I locked the door behind me, then I locked the deadbolt. Then I checked the back door. I never did that, but I did it that night. I don't know how long I stood in my living room, long enough that the silence started feeling loud, if that makes sense. I had the TV on, some late-night talk show, when I couldn't tell you a single thing that was on it because I wasn't watching it. I was just standing there listening. For what, I couldn't tell you. Just listening. After a while, I went to the window. I pulled the curtain back maybe half an inch and looked out. The car was closer. Now, it might have been my imagination. It might have been parked there all along and I just hadn't noticed. But I remember looking at the spot where it usually was, and it wasn't there. And I looked back at my driveway, and it was at the end of my driveway. Right at the turnoff, like it had moved while I was inside. I dropped the curtain so fast, I think I tore it a little. My heart was pounding. I stood there in the dark living room, and I remember thinking, okay, breathe. You don't know that it moved. You don't know anything. You're tired. And I was tired. I was exhausted. That was the thing. I worked second shift. I was always tired. And I was always half convinced I was seeing things that weren't there. I told myself that. I stood there with my hands shaking, and I told myself it was exhaustion and that I needed to go to bed. I went to the window again. I don't know why I did. I shouldn't have, but I did. The car was gone. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty spot where it had been, trying to figure out if that was better or worse. The next morning, I called my aunt. I told her about the car, tried to make it sound casual, like I was just asking if she knew who it belonged to. She said she didn't know anything about the car. Maybe it was one of the McAllister kids, like Bill said, but she'd ask around. I said thanks and hung up. I don't know what I expected her to say. She was in Florida anyway. It's not like she could do anything. I didn't sleep well that night. I slept on the couch with the lights on. The car didn't come back, or if it did, I didn't see it. The next day was my day off, and I decided I was going to confront whoever it was. I was tired of feeling like I was being watched in my own home. I made coffee, sat by the window and waited. The car didn't show up for hours. I felt like an idiot. Around noon, I went out to check my mail and I saw it. It was parked at the end of the street now, maybe 3 houses down, tucked into a spot where it was half hidden by trees. I could see the front license plate from where I was standing, or part of it anyway. The rest was obscured by branches. I walked toward it. I don't know why I did. Something about doing it in broad daylight felt safer. Like I could see it for what it was, just a car, just an ordinary car. I got maybe 20 feet from it when I realized there was someone inside. I stopped walking. The person, I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. They were wearing a baseball cap and their face was mostly in shadow, was just sitting there, behind the wheel, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead, not looking at me, just sitting. I stood there for what felt like forever. I wanted to go up to the window and knock. I wanted to ask what they were doing. I wanted to tell them to leave me alone, but I couldn't move. Something about the stillness of it. It wasn't normal stillness. It wasn't someone waiting for a friend or checking directions on their phone. It was like the person in that car was waiting for something. I don't know how long I stood there, but eventually I backed away. I walked backward to my house, kept my eyes on the car the whole time. The person never moved, never looked at me, just sat there. I went inside and called the police. The officer who came out was named Harris, I remember that. He was young, maybe mid-20s, and he had this bored look on his face like he'd rather be anywhere else. I told him about the car, the parked car, the same car, showing up at all hours. I told him about the person inside. I didn't tell him about the night I thought it moved, because I didn't want to sound crazy. He took down the plate number, or what I'd seen of it, and said he'd look into it. Then he gave me this talk about keeping my doors locked and calling if anything happened. The same speech they probably give everyone. He was nice enough about it, but I could tell he didn't think it was a big deal. I could tell he thought I was just some jumpy girl living alone for the first time. He drove off and I sat on my porch for a while, just watching the empty street. The car was gone. I hadn't even heard it leave. That night I didn't sleep again. I kept checking the windows. I kept looking for headlights in the dark. I started to feel like every shadow was a car, every sound was an engine idling. I was jumpy and exhausted, and I wasn't making sense anymore. At about 3 a.m., I looked out the window and saw the car. It was back in the old spot, right past my driveway. I could see the silhouette of someone inside. I called the police again. I was shaking so bad I could barely dial. I told the dispatcher there was a car outside my house with someone in it, and I was scared. She said they'd send someone. The police came in about 10 minutes. I watched them pull up, and I watched as they approached the car. One officer knocked on the window, the door opened. I saw someone get out, a woman, I think, and I saw them talking, hands in pockets, chatting like it was nothing. Then the officers got back in their car and drove off. The woman got back in her car and drove off. I didn't know what that meant. I stood there in my living room, phone in my hand, waiting for something. A knock on the door, a phone call, anything. But nothing came. I called the station the next morning. I asked if they'd found anything. The person who answered said they'd sent an officer to check on a suspicious vehicle and everything was fine. It was just someone waiting for a friend. A woman who'd had a fight with her boyfriend apparently and was sitting in her car while she cooled down. The officer had told her to move along. I wanted to believe that, I really did, but the car had been there for almost a month. There was no way she was sitting there every single night for a month because she'd had a fight with her boyfriend. That didn't make any sense. The thing was, the phone call I made to the station, the person I spoke to knew the whole story. I told it to them when I called in the night before. And when I called the next morning, the station acted like they'd never heard any of it. The dispatcher said something like, "Oh, that was yours." "No, we just checked on someone who was parked. She said she was waiting for a friend. We told her to move along." I asked if they'd taken her information. They said no, because she wasn't doing anything wrong. I asked if they'd seen the car when they drove by before I called. They said they didn't have any prior calls about a vehicle in that area. That was the moment I knew something was wrong, not just with the car, but with the whole situation. I thought about leaving. I packed a bag that afternoon and seriously considered just driving to my mum's house 2 hours away. But I felt like if I left, I'd be giving in to something. And I wanted to be able to tell myself I wasn't scared, so I stayed. That was the stupidest thing I ever did. The car kept showing up every night, same spot. Some nights I'd see someone inside, some nights I wouldn't. Some nights the car would be there when I went to sleep and gone when I woke up. Some nights it would be gone when I went to sleep and there when I woke up. I tried everything. I stayed at a friend's house for a weekend. I came home and the car was there, like it had been waiting for me. I parked in the garage, my car, the one with the remote opener, and I still felt like it knew I was there. I started sleeping with the lights on. I started sleeping in my car in the driveway, just so I could see if anything was happening. I know that's insane, I know. But I didn't know what else to do. The night it finally changed, I came home, and the car wasn't in the usual spot. It was in my driveway. I pulled up behind it and sat there with my headlights on, shining into its back window. I could see the silhouette of someone in the driver's seat, just sitting there, like they were waiting for me to get home. I called the police. This time, I didn't even wait for them to arrive. I backed out of my driveway, drove to the station, and told them everything. I cried. I don't know why I cried, but I did. I told them about the month of this car following me, the night I thought it moved, the woman who wasn't a woman, the station who didn't have any record of my call. They took a report this time. They said they'd keep an eye on the house, and I got home and the car was gone. It never came back. It's been 7 years. I don't live on Hemlock Lane anymore. I moved to a different city about a year after that. I'm engaged now, and I've got a good job, and life is normal in all the ways that matter. But I still check my rearview mirror constantly. I still park in well-lit areas. I still can't sleep without a light on somewhere in the house. The car never came back. I never saw the woman's face. The police never found anything. I don't know who was in that car. I don't know what they wanted. I don't know why they chose me. I just know that for a month, someone sat outside my house in the dark, and they knew I was there, and they were waiting for something. And I still don't know what.